Welcome to another stream for the Americans in Paris. Today I'm running the show. I'm Stephen Heiner, and with me, as always, is my dear friend and partner in crime, Molly Sabre. Hi, Molly.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
This is a rare breaking news live,
I know. I wish we could have like the like breaking news
right? The,
thing.
the Chiron.
Yeah.
So normally we pride ourselves on having what we like to think of as evergreen content. So our lives are usually the opposite of breaking news.
Yeah.
There are things that will be helpful, we hope, for people who want to move to France forever. That is not the case today. So Molly, can you set us up a little bit for what we're talking about?
Yes. So there are a lot of people who do very similarly to what we do. So who give advice to other expats on how to move from the United States to France. Some of them are like us. There's people from speaking from experience. Some of them are immigration lawyers and tax experts and like everything in between. And for a really long time, something that set the American in Paris website and our consultation service apart was our stance on whether or not you can work remotely under the visitor visa. And we had, I mean, Stephen, you did it yourself. We've advised clients on this for years at this point, and we always were firm believers in the fact that you could use a US based remote job as your source of income. And we advised clients to do it for years, and no one ever got rejected. The French authorities never told them that that was illegal, that wasn't allowed, contrary to what some other consultants believe. And we helped dozens and dozens of people get their visitor visa that way. And we were very clear along the way that we would change our guidance if French law stated otherwise. And as you can all imagine what I'm about to say, French law has finally reared its head. It has finally decided to shake things up after hundreds of years of not changing. And it was you, Stephen, who stumbled across this little article that was published by the
Well, and
local.
I can't take credit. It was one of our readers who
Mhm.
I think either was going to do a consultation with us or has talked to us before, who had mentioned it. And when I had a chance to look at the article more closely, I realized this is a pretty major sea change.
Mhm.
So I want to set this up by explaining that when there is guidance given by a governmental organization, it means there has not been clarity before. And sometimes this isn't intentional. So, for example, when cryptocurrency hit the scene in the US, the IRS had to figure out, how does this get classified? Does it go on this form or on this form? Is there depreciation? All the nerdy tax stuff, which I'm sure none of you are interested in. But guidance had to be issued. And once guidance was issued, nobody could then say, no one has ever told me how to handle this.
Look
Um,
at this. It's so funny.
and, Roswell, hi, Derek. So Derek is actually the one who brought this to our attention. So shout out to Derek. And so once you're given guidance from a governmental organization, you are, at least from that moment on, required to treat things that way. Sometimes the guidance will say, this has to be retroactively applied. So
Mhm.
I'm going to make up let's say they had a ruling on chicken coops, okay, and where they had to be depreciated. The guidance might say this applies to all chicken coops from 2025 on and retroactively to 2023, which means you'd have to go back and amend your tax return to do that.
Mhm.
Now, I want to point out that what Molly said originally is still true. Who is the governing body for whether you can come to France? Is it the tax authorities or is it immigration?
Mhm.
Hint, it is not the tax authorities, it is immigration. The immigration authorities in France will still allow you to come in on remote work. That has not changed. What has changed is that the tax authorities have explicitly said, we consider this remote work. And for purposes of our department, uh, we will take we will look unkindly upon this. I'm going to read the exact quote, so don't
Yeah,
just take
read it.
don't take Stephen's word. The French tax authorities consider that work is carried out in France when it is physically performed from French territory, regardless of the employer or location of the clients. So if you're an employer or freelancer working for a company based abroad, but physically carrying out your tasks from France, this constitutes work carried out in France for tax purposes. And the digital Karens will crow from the housetops. This is what we've always believed. And I don't doubt that that's what you've always believed. But the fact that there had to be clarification given from the tax office, as opposed to please see previously enunciated bulletin from 1995,
Mm,
the fact that they had to say this recognizes that remote work is ambiguous enough that it had to be clarified.
mhm.
So, yes, digital Karens, you can go to sleep with peace in your heart tonight, and you can print this out and put it under your pillow and fall asleep to it. Okay. But what I'm trying to say is that when I say there's no change on the immigration side, that means practically speaking, we cannot advise our clients to proceed
Mhm, mhm,
because after immigration, when you get to France, the tax authorities play a disproportionately important role in your immigration journey. I know that sounds strange because you're like, wait, I thought immigration got me in. Yes, immigration is the one who processes your legal entry into France. Now, if you want to stay in France long term, your tax documents, as I say, are disproportionately important. And it should indicate to you what is the most important thing in France:
mhm.
paying your taxes
Yeah.
up from everything else. Are you a good citizen? Have you broken the law? No. First thing I want to see is, have you paid your taxes? For better or for worse. Okay. Now, what that means is you could, and there's an article that'll come out on the website tomorrow that outlines this, but you could hypothetically continue to skate. And you could take the advice, well, Steven said I could still get in, and you know your French financial technical um you know French well enough financially and technically to do your own tax return, and you put in there foreign sourced income. There's no way, despite what the digital Karens I think hope and dream of,
Mm,
there is no way for the French to know that you work remotely. None whatsoever. And the tax authorities don't have some deporting authority as
mm.
much as the digital Karens would like them to have it. The best they could do is report you for something, but it would still be on immigration to deport you. And you would still be able to say, et cetera, et cetera. But you wouldn't be able to say, I didn't know about what the tax authorities said about digital work.
It's a great way to show just how disconnected all of these government bodies are, and it's something that I talk about this in my consultations sometimes too. Some people, before they've made it through the whole entire immigration process and they've got their visa and everything like that, once you enter French soil, no one from immigration is going to be knocking on your door, checking in to seeing if you're actually going to school or actually following the business plan you laid out in your profil. They're not going to, they
No
don't
welcome
care.
basket. No welcome basket, no
No,
follow-up emails. I remember seeing in a
no,
forum someone said, I haven't received my renewal notice. You think the
no.
French government cares?
They're
It's up to
they
you. You've got
exactly,
your big boy or big girl trousers on now, and you've got to figure that out for yourself. And so,
exactly.
what that means practically, as alluded to, those tax documents play a leading role in your 10-year card or citizenship. And uh, even if you continue to do what I said, keep putting it as foreign source income, there's no way for them to know. What on the practical level matters is that they'll look and see that most of your income or all of your income is foreign sourced, which for them is opposed to the narrative that you are building a life in France.
Right.
In the French bureaucratic mind, money that comes from outside France doesn't count.
Mhm.
Doesn't count for your argument that I live in France, I'm stable in France. For them, they don't know that money could get cut off any day.
Yeah.
There's no guarantee of that money. So, in the French bureaucratic mind, foreign sourced income doesn't make a good case, not only for your 10-year card, but it is 100% a deal breaker for citizenship. If neither of those things matter to you, you could continue on remote working for forever. You just have to show up for your 1-year card renewal every year. And until they somehow tighten up the bonds to digitally spy on you, if the
Mm.
French government is horrible enough to hire Palantir, like the U.S. government and the Israeli government have to spy on their own citizens, there's no real way for them to know that you work remotely. Just like there's no way for them to know you watch our live stream. The surveillance state has not gotten there in France yet.
Yeah.
So you could continue on, but you would never be able to get a 10-year card or citizenship. And some people are fine with that. And there are people, frankly, who are not competent enough in French to get a 10-year card. So they've lived in France for 20 years and done a 1-year renewal every year for 20 years. Which,
Yeah.
Molly, just saying that out loud to you and me, I get some shivers. Yeah.
I know, I know. Not only is the just totally crushing under the weight of all the paperwork, having to do that once a year. It's also as you were talking, it was just bringing up another fact for me that we've definitely said in another live stream where if you don't actually want to like integrate into French culture and society, why are you even in France? Why are you in France long term? You get to the point where I think you said it, you put it this way, Stephen, and I agree with you. You're treating France like an amusement park, and you're there with it's so I'm laughing because someone commented on a TikTok video I put up saying that we Americans come over with our big American money and don't know what it's really like to live in France. And in a way, there are some people who do that. I don't think you or I are one of them, but
And we said before, no judgment. It's your
yeah,
money, your life. If
exactly.
France is a fun amusement park to you, have at it. Your your attitude will still contribute to France's wealth
Hmm.
and the well-being of the people who work there.
Hmm.
So I'm happy. Go to France, treat it like an amusement park, and benefit many people because of that. I appreciate that. On behalf of France, as if I'm on the talk.
And two, you know, in this, no one's going to be in the same way that no one's going to be checking in on you. You know, if you feel comfortable blatantly going against what the French authorities are saying, then you do you in a way. Like
However, ironically, that makes you very French.
it does, it does, it does.
Like
Um,
ask a French person how to break French tax law. We'll have a 1 hour conversation.
I know.
And everyone from the family will have different ways they've cheated the French government before.
Mhm,
It's like a
mhm.
national sport.
Except
However,
my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law is like
it's very
the
strict.
goody two shoes. She's the one actually calling like les impôts to be like, did I do it right? Shout out to Claire. Sabri, I love you. So
But
funny.
she is an exception. The
Yeah,
French take a
yeah,
lot of pride in cheating their own government. However, they are citizens. You are not.
exactly.
They
Exactly.
cannot have anything happen to them in that way. So you always have to, as a two-time immigrant myself, I'm always very mindful of being a guest in someone else's country. So we encourage that attitude at Tape. And now that I've talked about the risk it for the biscuit people who are, I'm still going to do it anyway, let's talk about the two most obvious cases. You are
Yeah.
one of the people we've worked with over the years, and we've told you you can keep working your remote job and come to France as a visitor. You're going to need to transition out of your visitor status.
Mhm.
And interestingly enough, I just got an email this morning, Molly. Someone transitioned from passport talent to visitor.
Okay.
And they
Okay.
got a notice. I had said before in the comment, I said, I'm not sure whether they'll let you do that, but please let us know if they do.
Mhm.
And he said they approved it with a note saying, are you sure you want to do this? It means you can't work. And he said, yeah. And I don't remember exactly the circumstances of why he was exiting Talon,
I
but he
see.
transitioned to another visa. So that's what we would argue is you're going to need to transition from visitor to profession liberal.
Mhm.
This has been the path advocated by other people in our industry, quote unquote industry, the help Americans come to France industry. There has been an unscrupulous actor in our industry who's been charging people four, five, six, $8,000 to quote unquote help them write a business plan, and then this person has never actually opened a business in her life, and she didn't even get the profession liberal visa. I say this person, I've identified this person as a she. You know who you are. But we have been opposed to this for many years. We don't want anyone paying anybody $4,000. We want to give you the template. We have a course. I think it's under $300 that'll walk you through step by step and comes with templates. Or you could do a consultation with Molly or myself. That was certainly less than $300 as well. But the point is, we want to empower people to do things themselves.
Yeah.
We do not believe in the guru, pay me $4,000 and I'll get you into France. That's nuts. That's crazy. Or I think
Because
this person now charges $8,000, Molly.
I saw that they increased their pricing as well. Because, and ultimately, it's also like we never claimed to be immigration lawyers that can take people through, like, do the application for them. Basically, we're happy to sit on a call and our
Well,
client
actually,
is
we've
there
never done
filling
that.
it out.
We've never
No,
done that. People who have offered, and that's not who we are.
mm-mm.
We've done this ourselves scrappy, and we want to convey that same spirit to you. We want to make people feel empowered where they feel scared. So
Mhm.
they feel scared, they don't know things, and we want to, first of all, up their knowledge quotient. You know a lot after talking with us. That's
Mhm.
one of the things they always get off the phone. They say, "Wow, it's a lot less.
I
It's a
feel
lot
so
less
much better.
scary. I feel
Yeah,
so much
talking
better."
to you.
That's the number one thing we'll hear at the end of a consult is,
Mhm.
I didn't know all those things, and now I feel better
Mhm.
because it's scary. We didn't have anyone to turn to in our scariness in the beginning. We just had to gut it out ourselves, and always surprised that, in the end, when I look back and say, we did all this by ourselves, Molly.
I know, I
So
know.
so we're very happy to be the helpers to these other people, but that means you have to transition to profession liberal. Now, this is easier for some professions other than others. So if you are in a profession that doesn't have a special classification in France, and I just made one up, let's say bookkeeping.
Mhm.
Bookkeepers, there's no distinction in France. The word is comptable, and there is no distinction in French between a bookkeeper and an accountant. Everyone's
Mhm.
a comptable.
Yeah.
In America, there is. And in America, there's no specialized degree for bookkeeping. You might have to articulate that more in your business plan, but yes, I hope to do bookkeeping for some French businesses, and I will be learning some of the French bookkeeping techniques. And I already do bookkeeping in America, so that's the whole point. Is you have to make the case that you can have this business and that you have a French audience for whatever business that is. And when I say business, I say it loosely. Whatever it is you're doing remotely, could you do it in a freelancer position? So if you are a graphic designer, that's a one-to-one, very easy, right?
Yes.
If I'm a video editor, one-to-one, very easy. If I'm a bookkeeper, one-to-one, very easily. Marketing, could I go from being the in charge of the marketing department for my corporation to being a freelance marketing consultant? 100%. It's
Yeah.
just that you've got to package and market it, quote unquote, in your dossier to make it believable. And then there'll be an income cap on what you do. The other route you could go could be passport talent, buy a bed and breakfast, buy a business, get involved that way. There's a lot more money involved there. Those are two financially incompatible ideas, right?
Mhm.
Someone who wants to be a freelancer and someone who wants to throw a bunch of money and build a business.
Yeah.
These are two different things.
Mhm.
So that's door number one. Is you are already someone who we've consulted with in the past, and we are advising you of this now. We're telling you should transition. Not right now. The police are not going to, the digital Karens want you to believe that the police are about to break down your
Yeah.
door.
Yeah.
That's not the case. Whatever your next renewal is between now and then, and
Mhm.
if you need to, give us a ring, we'll help you work on the business plan. We can do another consultation for that, and think about what sort of business you want, and then you're going to apply for a changement de statut. You're going to
Mhm.
do a change of status, and you will do the same path I did. I went from visitor to prof lead, and now you have a stable life in France, and no digital Karens can touch you.
I have a follow-up question on that, Stephen. Would you say that the process for applying for Prof Libre from the United States is the same or comparable to doing a changement de statut in France? Is it easier to do it in France? Is there any difference?
I would, it, as far as what you have to present, there's no difference.
Okay.
The difference is that someone who's presenting it from France is someone who's already entirely comfortable living in France.
Yeah.
And you don't have to say, well, I am going to live here and I hope to live in France.
Right.
A renewal from France is always with an additional muscular confidence. I
Mhm.
already live here. I would like to continue living here.
Mhm.
The appendix here is I would like to continue living here and I'd like to change the situation I'm in.
Mhm.
And that's all throughout French bureaucracy. There's always a box, changement de situation, or something like. There's
Yeah.
always the French always acknowledge life is life. You
Mhm.
know, things change, and your address may change, your marital situation may change. Molly had definitely one of those marital situation changes.
Mhm.
So you have to inform them of that. And so one of those that, okay, I was a visitor, now I'd like to be a freelancer. It's a perfectly normal thing. I did it. You can do it too. The other side would be people who we have talked to in the last 6 months to a year, because anyone longer than that, they've already applied.
Yeah.
But they were thinking about becoming a visitor and they hadn't applied yet. And we hadn't had a conversation with them, or we had a conversation with them. And they said, okay, I think I'm going to go that path.
Mhm.
If you haven't already applied, we have to dissuade you from doing so.
Yeah.
Not because you wouldn't get accepted. We've already said you will, because the
Yeah.
immigration authorities accept remote work as a legitimate form of employment and finances in France for whatever reason. I'm not here to explain the intricacies of why France does what it does. It's that you need to find another path. And if you don't want to be a freelancer and you don't want to be a student and you're too old to be an au pair and you don't want to buy or build a business, you're not a special tech sector employee, you're not notable in your field, then maybe France is not going to be the place for you. Now, this isn't to say that there are not workarounds. You
Mhm.
couldn't get a visa in another country that is less supervisory and spend large amounts of time in France,
Mhm.
maybe even the entire year.
Mhm.
Europe is very open that way. But until France institutes another status to allow you to work remotely for purposes of taxation, which is more important in France than anything else, we can't advise you to apply. Even though it's legal on the immigration side, the consequences on the tax side are such that it doesn't make any sense to do so.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, and Molly, I would say this is maybe the first time since the website started in 2012, 2013. I think this is the first time that we've ever had a major policy change
Yeah.
where we've said this before, we can't say this anymore.
Mhm. Mhm.
So,
No, it's a big change, and it's like you say, it does in a way sort of take away the dream of moving to France for some people. It does. There's no denying that. And again, it's like we're just the messenger. Like we're so sorry, and it's sad, and I do hope that France, gets with the times a little bit and creates a remote work visa or a digital nomad visa. Stephen, you mentioned a couple other places when we were talking
yeah.
earlier.
Um, Portugal, Spain,
Mhm.
the one that comes to mind most is Croatia. Actually helped a couple people who were looking at that who I don't I don't know how the conversation went that way. They were first consulting about France, and I said, "Well, we don't really have a digital nomad visa." And I casually mentioned Croatia, and they said, "Well, tell me about that." For some reason or another, I had listened to a podcast about it a week later, and I just basically turned into a regurgitator of the facts of the
Yeah.
case. 20 minutes later, I basically had consulted for a Croatia digital nomad visa. But what was funny was in that country, immigration and taxation had consulted with each other
Mm.
and they passed a law. And that's how things work normally.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, at that iteration, I don't know if this is still the case, but at that iteration of the Croatian digital nomad visa, you didn't have to pay into the tax system for the year that
Mm.
you were there. And I don't even know if it was renewable for that first year, but you were not in the tax system. The Croatians thought better to just because that's a disincentive. People thought, well,
Mm.
now I've got to learn Croatian or enter the Croatian tax system. So
Yeah.
they said, no, no, come here and effectively give us a taste.
Mhm.
See if you like life here. And if you do, sorry, I put a Ricola in my mouth. So if I sound like I have a Ricola in my mouth, I do. But give us a taste. And if you want to stay in Croatia, you'll figure it out.
Mhm.
That is an attitude I take in life.
Yeah.
And and that's what we've said so often about coming to France. Come, give it out. You give it a try. You don't have to commit for the rest of your life. Just come and see how it goes. So this door, let's say, has closed for a portion of the population who cannot, as we noted, go to any of these other visa classifications. I'm sad for that because it means that France will be deprived of some great people.
Mhm.
There are great remote workers who, in fact, these are law and order people who go grocery shopping, pay their rent. They do everything else that a non digital nomad slash digital worker slash remote worker would do. They do all of those things, except they don't fit in the current French paradigm, which moves very slowly, which is part of why we love it.
Mhm.
So once again, it's the French government. It can do as it wishes. And as I say, this
Right.
isn't even the French government. This is the tax department who is effectively making an immigration policy. But that's up to them. I can't do anything about it. As Molly said, we're just messengers. Please don't shoot us. But we are messengers who want to help you
Mhm.
however you want to come to France. And if you can't, we're not going to lie to you and tell you in a legal way you can do it.
Right.
We want to set you up for long-term success in France, and that can only be possible if you go about things honestly from the start.
I have a consult is coming to mind where I consulted with someone once on a student visa, and they asked me at one point, "Do I really have to go to class? Like, do I actually have to do that?" And it's the same sort of thing as this stuff. Like, no, again, no one from immigration is going to be knocking on your door saying, "Hey, did you go to class today?" But if you want to renew a student visa or even do a changement de statut, like France is going to want to see that you were doing what you came to do.
And when they find out you didn't, bad consequences.
Yeah, and especially for folks who really want to create a real life for themselves in France, like the last thing you want is that big red stamp in your passport saying that you can't, enter France for a certain amount of time. And so we will, of course, be following this as it progresses. Like this is like honestly, we're kind of joking, but it is breaking news. I mean, the article was published on the 7th.
It was
It's the 11th.
she, I think, and this is Emma Pearson from the Local, so shout
Mhm.
out to her investigative journalism, if we want to put
Yeah.
it that way. Although I had noted that in the article, it was strange that they said this has been exclusively, like it's a Vogue magazine, weddings cover spread. If it's a government entity and it applies to immigrants, it should be published on a government website, not
Mm.
on a semi-paywalled website. But I appreciate, the important thing is the information. So thank you, Emma, and the Local for doing the work. And we might put a link if we remember after the live stream to put that in the description,
Yes.
Molly. But the the article came out on the 2nd, and then it was corrected or updated on the 7th. So she might have just corrected a quote or two or something like that. I don't know what the original article looked like on the 2nd. And we're recording this on the 11th. And we'll have an article come out on the website tomorrow on the 12th. So we're trying to stay ahead of this as much as we can. But to review, for those of you who are coming later to the stream, obviously you can always go back once the stream is over, go back to the beginning and watch from again. I just want to point out the three possibilities from this ruling that the tax authorities have stated that remote work is effectively the same thing as physical work, which it clearly is not, either metaphysically or in reality. But they are stating, washing dishes in France is the exact same as working on a spreadsheet in the United States and France from your computer. It's clearly the exact same thing. There are three options. Number one, you hear this from us, you disregard our concerns, you disregard our caution signs and stop signs, and you do it anyway. The French tax authorities will not be able to figure it out. But if you have a long-term desire to stay in France, your lack of French financial anchorage is what's going to stop you, not your remote working.
Yeah.
It's the fact that you don't. Now, as I'm developing this, Molly, I realize you could develop French financial anchorage on your own. Maybe you buy some properties and you get cash flow from that, and it's so substantial that the French can say, "Oh, look, Molly is definitely here. Look at all of her properties."
Yeah.
That's one way you could do it, and that's something else that's hilarious. That's making money in France, but it's not considered working.
Hmm.
I'm sure the digital Karens are very upset about that, but you don't even have to live in France to own property.
Yeah.
You
You don't
don't
need
have
a
to be a
visa
resident.
to
You don't
own
need a visa.
property.
People are so uninformed. They're like, don't I need a visa to own property? Why would you need a visa to own property?
Yeah.
Now, it is true in some parts of the world, you can't, if you're not a member of the nationality, you can't. So, for example, the Emirates or in Thailand, you have to form a corporation with somebody who is a citizen, and that's the only
Mm.
way you can buy property.
Okay.
Like non-Thai people cannot buy property in Thailand.
Okay.
That's just how it is. It's their country, their rights, their
Yeah.
rules.
Yeah.
That's not a protest. I'm just pointing out that doesn't apply in France.
Mhm.
So if you go this path and you ignore our stop signs and our warning signs, you will not be able to pursue a 10-year card or a citizenship just on your remote work. You may be able to do it by other means. And as I say, they'll never catch you, but that's that. If you have already come into France as a visitor using our guidelines, which you did legally, now that this guidance is out here, for the tax year that just passed, no problem. And you don't need to make a confession of your digital crimes. All you have to do is do a change of status to Profleeb, and between now and whenever your renewal is, we can work on that. Now, if your renewal is in like 2 weeks or 2 days, I'm gonna say treat it as normal and
Yeah.
buy yourself another year to work on this problem.
Yeah.
It's too soon for you to try to come up with a business plan in the next 2 weeks, 2 days. I'd say Molly 6 weeks. I think they're 2 months out. That's enough time for them to put their paperwork together.
Yeah.
So if it's under if it's under 2 months, just do a renewal and let's buy ourselves another year to think about it.
Yeah.
As for those of you who have not yet applied and you are planning on this based on everything you've read and heard from us over the years, I'm sorry to tell you they've changed things and they've closed this door. So look at alternatives, and we're happy to talk to you about alternatives. You can leave a comment on one of our articles or send us an email if you want to do a consult. We'll do our best to help you. We are enormous advocates of France. As I said, between Molly and myself, we have 20 years of life experience of living in France, and we want to help you experience even a fraction of that.
Yeah.
And if we can, we will.
Yes. I hope anyone watching this isn't like crying in tears because I feel so discouraged. Like my heart goes out to the people who were really excited about coming to France on the visitor visa and continuing to work remotely. I feel like between Stephen and I, we're kind of the masters of figuring it out and making it work. So
We have so
please,
many figuring it out stories.
oh my goodness. So please, 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 please reach out to us if you're watching this and you're feeling a little bit hopeless. We'll talk you through it. Like there's always a solution. We're Americans, right? Like we'll always find a solution.
We figure it out.
Yes, exactly.
Shameless plug for the book Molly and I developed
Yes.
as part of our journey, 29 Days to France. We'll try to remember to put a link in the description, but if not, you can find it. It's right there at the top of our website on the desktop version, or scroll down in the bottom. If you're watching in mobile, you'll see a link to the book. And this will help you plan your move to France. And if there's any questions in the chat, for people who are watching, and there's a few people watching now, please let me know. Otherwise, I will head for wrap up of our chat, and we are heading towards summer vacation, Molly.
I know.
The French have been, keep in mind, the French have been planning this as we have, because we've lived among the French long enough. You plan your summer vacation on your last vacation, which was only a few months before, and then you talk about your last vacation with everybody at dinner, and then what are you doing next? So a lot of conversation in France is about where you have come from on your last vacation and where you're going to.
Yeah.
Never underestimate that, nor the power, the possibility of talking about another meal you have eaten while you are eating a meal.
Yes, yes. Or the next one coming up. Like, so funny. That's like so classic my in-laws on both sides.
So part of the joys of French life. So if you've got any questions, please put them in the chat. Or if you are watching this on replay, please leave questions in the comments. So that way we can keep the conversation going. And Molly and I have lots of exciting content. I'm actually visiting her soon, and we're going to do some fun content together. But keep track of what we're doing here, and as I say, keep the conversation going with any comments and questions you have if you're watching this on replay.
Absolutely.
Molly, anything else before we wrap up?
I don't think so. I think we covered everything.
Okay, so if you are watching this on June the 11th or if you're watching this after June 11th, head over to theamericaninparis.com and you'll see my article, which is pretty much a written summary of what we've talked about today. Until next time, à bientôt.
À bientôt.